Islam, Islam, Islam. First I rise to my highest heights, giving all praises due to Allah. And I give honors to all true and divine prophets. I'm Sheikh Amir El. Peace. So today, what I want to go into with the Moors is some of the things I kind of want to touch on is I want to illuminate the difference between what Prophet Noble Drew Ali wrote, what he taught, and what's being promoted and practiced by Moors today that use his name. I want to make a distinction now between Moors who use the Prophet's name and call themselves Moors or Moorish Americans or any variation of it, and Moors who navigate as Moors. They know the history that their ancestors was Moors, and they just navigating as Moors, but they're not using the Prophet in what they're doing. They're not mixing the Prophet's name in with whatever agenda or what they're promoting. And the reason why that's problematic is simply this. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who is respected and honored among our people here in the West as a prophet of Allah, he came with a certain program, right? He came as a measure of divine intervention to save us from the wrath of Allah, to save our fallen nation from the wrath of Allah, to give us a pathway out so that we can escape the destruction if our hearts are pure and our hearts are true. What these Moors are doing is they taking Moors off the path of the Prophet because they mixing in truth with falsehood. They mixing in the truth as in the Prophet Noble Drew Ali himself. They mixing in the truth with the fact that we're Moors, but then they're mixing in falsehood, which is their own preconceived notions of how this Moorish movement is supposed to go. Now, if you have an idea that's going to further what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali laid down, the foundation of what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali laid down, it doesn't violate nothing that he taught or promoted or any laws that he brought forth, then cool. This is exactly what a movement is. A movement's supposed to advance. It's supposed to go further. It's supposed to become more sophisticated and efficient and all of these things over time. You can build upon a foundation. But what I'm arguing is immoral, and what Moors are doing that's wrong is they are building a whole new structure, but they want to take a piece of the foundation. And then they want to, build on top of that. But it's like you have to be able to distinguish between what Moors are saying today in 2021 versus what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali was saying in 1928 and prior. And the way we're able to do that, and the way we're able to hear the Prophet's voice, is by reading his works. So y'all want to read every Moor, you're going to call a whole bunch of Moors master teachers, and they wrote these books and da-da-da-da-da, and you familiar with their works. But shame on you that you don't know the Prophet's works. Because if you were studying the Prophet before you studied these so-called master teachers, you would know what we know, where they're not being accurate, where they're not being genuine, when they're not being honest. You see? And so I want to start with the divine warning by the Prophet for the nations. And what I hope to do in this presentation here is to put a clean glass next to a dirty glass. And then you choose which one you want to drink from. You choose which one is the clean glass and which one is the dirty glass. So I'm going to give you my conceptions of what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught and brought using his words. And then I'm going to utilize what we all know and see with our within our observable reality. We seeing what Moors are doing and saying. So we can immediately know whether or not they're in line with the Prophet. All right? So I'm going to need a reader, for the divine warning.
Islam, I got you.
Islam, Sheikh. But just hang on 1 second. Before we get started on the divine warning, I want to say this. I use the term radical Moors to describe these individuals. But the term that Rome uses, and obviously the mainstream media, social media that's outside of anything irrespective of calling yourself a Moor, They refer to them as sovereign citizens. And I understand why these Moors take exception with being called sovereign citizens, because then you get labeled a paper terrorist, and then it seems like the heat comes on you. But it's like, we need to look at how they're defining what a sovereign citizen is. And is your behavior that you're engaging in fitting this definition? And furthermore, why it's going to be more of a profound impact is we're going to see that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali didn't co-sign none of this that they're talking about. He didn't co-sign resurrecting the Moorish Empire. He didn't co-sign separate yourself from the United States of America and forming your own government distinct from them. He didn't do none of that. That's what some other Moors who came later decided to do, and then still want to claim Prophet Noble Drew Ali. But we're going to prove it. We're not going to just say it. We're going to prove it. But before we do that, I want to define, what a sovereign citizen is. And we're going to look at this BBC article. All right? We're going to look at this BBC article. Even though they're not in the United States, obviously they cover, global, they do global news coverage. All right, so we're looking at what is the sovereign citizen movement, right? Okay? So they don't want to be called sovereign citizens, but it's not so much about the label, it's about the behavior. I'm going to read it. A growing movement of people who believe that laws do not apply to them threatens police and law enforcement around the world, experts and officials say. All right, so that's one component of what will be considered a sovereign citizen. They believe that the laws do not apply to them. They believe that the laws of the United States do not apply to them. Now, how is that different from what we view? We say unconstitutional laws don't apply to us. You see that difference? That's a major distinction, because that is the demonstration that we are acknowledging the Constitution of the United States of America. And we're not just doing that because, we sell out and we don't care about our people. This is what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali acknowledged. This is what he set up for us. And we're going to see that in the divine warning. You want to understand the national side of the movement. If you want to know what that encompasses and have a general overview, you must study this specific work of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali to understand conceptually how he wanted this on a national side. It's not so much an emphasis or focus on religion, but a focus on law, nationality, and history. This is what this particular work from a prophet of Allah is speaking to. This is very, this is very outside of the realm of what you would think somebody who's a theologian, who's somebody who's deep in scripture will be discussing. But this is what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought about. All right? So I'm going to read just a little bit more of this. I'm going to read the section where it says, who are sovereign citizens? The FBI has described the movement, which lacks any organizational structure. Let me stop right there. Within the Moorish Science Temple of America, within the United States of America, with any government around the world, you could determine, you could find out, if you don't know off top, who's the leader, right? Who makes the laws? Who enforces the laws? Who are essentially the government officials within each of those governments? And I don't want to say this about all outside Moorish fringe groups, but I will say many of them, including some of the most popular ones, don't even have a proclaimed leader. The person who's ever promoting or propping up the movement that they developed, that particular person will say, "Oh, I'm not the leader." And this is where the sovereign citizen concept comes from, because you're a citizen. You're not a sovereign in the conventional sense of the term. So you're a citizen of something, but you have the powers of a sovereign. exclusively unto yourself. There's no leader. There's no hierarchical structure. There's no way of enforcement. Like, what if one of these Moors do something against the laws of these group of Moors? What are you going to do? You're not going to do nothing. Because the second you do something to them, they're going to claim 14th Amendment citizenship on them and come after you. All of the Moors that be in these groups advocate principles that are ultimately, inevitably, wind up getting a lot of people locked up. And this is the only reason why we have anything to say about them. Like, if you were just doing what you were doing, and you were just getting yourself locked up, and you wasn't impacting or influencing others to do things that were causing harm to themselves, their lives, and their families, then we wouldn't have nothing to say about you. And we don't call specific names because that's not the point, is to call this person out or to call that person out. We're not clout chasing. We don't care about none of y'all names or what none of y'all are doing. But we care about the impact that you're having on the legacy of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the legacy of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and the legacy of anybody identifying themselves as Moorish Americans, carrying that red flag with that 5-pointed green star in the center. And that's the problem, and why we are addressing these issues in the way that we are. And you know, I probably should have said this in the beginning, we challenge any one of y'all to a debate that disagree with us, under the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Ain't nothing wrong with debating. That's how you can get to the truth. Hearing two different sides and deciding which side appeals more to your understanding. Islam? So let me finish reading this. The FBI has described the movement, which lacks any organizational structure, as domestic terrorism. That's why they don't want the label. But let's keep going and see what they mean by domestic terrorism. Whatever. In the U.S., and calls followers anti-government extremists who believe, so sort of, right, let's pump the brakes right there. Anti-government extremists. This is the rhetoric that's being used to associate with Moors. But how can you deny it? Every other nation on the planet has recognized the United States of America. Morocco has recognized the United States of America through the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, the longest lasting treaty to ever exist. And because you're mad about how the cards played out against you, you don't want to acknowledge this government that's considered lawful, not only to the Kingdom of Morocco and the vestiges of the Moorish Empire and all the other nations of the planet Earth. Not only to them, but also to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali himself. He recognizes the United States of America. And you see, it wouldn't be no problem if you didn't use his name in promoting whatever you're trying to sell. It wouldn't be no problem there. You could say, he didn't know what he was talking about. I don't agree with him. But you lie instead. You make it seem like you are carrying out his legacy. And we're going to prove that you're lying. Islam. So anti-government extremists, these Moors are against the United States of America. Now, see, we against the inferior names, mistreatments, and abuses that have been bestowed upon our ancestors and our kind in America. But we're not against the Constitution itself. If all those rights applied to us equally, we wouldn't have no problem. Obviously, prior to the 14th Amendment, but that's another discussion. But we wouldn't have no problem pertaining to that. We may get into that a little bit in the discussion, but for now, it's about the abuses. It's about the double standards in the society. It's about that, you know, one group of people could get, you know, certain advantages and privileges and another group cannot get disadvantages, and even up until our very lives being taken without no justice. That's what this is about. It's not about having superior classification of citizenship over another group of people. But again, when we get into the Prophet's words themselves, we're going to see. But a lot of these Moors say, you know, the United States of America, it ain't nothing but a corporation. Because it has a corporate character, i.e., after the United States of America was formed, almost a century later, it creates a corporation by the same name. And now you utilize the corporation created to discredit the actual government that's perpetual, according to the Articles of Association. These are the things that y'all do. But the Prophet didn't do that. He didn't mention nothing ill or negative about the United States of America in his literature. I challenge you to produce it. or the Constitution itself. All right, so anti-government extremists who believe that even though they physically reside in this country, and again, they get into the legalese and reside versus domicile. Y'all not saying nothing. You think that you go, well, you see, they say the word reside, and we domicile the United States, all this legal jargon, all of these technicalities, all these unlicensed attorneys. Though they physically reside in this country, they are separate or sovereign from the United States of America. Question: did the Prophet Noble Drew Ali advocate separation from the United States of America? Did the Prophet Noble Drew Ali advocate sovereignty for the United States of America, from the United States of America, advocating the Moorish Simple America or any Moorish entity to be a sovereign constructed entity separated from the United States of America? And how do we know? Well, we can leave it right there. That's enough for a basic definition. This is what the FBI has been saying. Okay, this goes down to taxes. Moors argue. We don't argue against taxation. We understand that governments, ancient and modern, operational costs to provide benefits for citizens come out of taxes. That's not our dispute. Once again, we argue against unconstitutional taxation. That's our argument. We argue that the current system of taxation is not in continuity with the constitutional requirements. That's our argument against taxes. But if taxes were apportioned according to the constitutional requirements, we wouldn't argue it. We would pay it as citizens. But see, y'all argue about that, didn't apply for food stamps. Or then say the government's supposed to do something for you, a service that it provides for its taxpaying citizens, you're going to demand that same service, but then at the same time say you're not a citizen. And then try to use the Constitution, under which protects citizens, you're going to use that against the government at the same time saying you're not a citizen. And see, this is the confusion. So without further ado, let's get into what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, because Sheikah may have been doing a lot of talking, been saying what the Prophet said, but he ain't quoting the Prophet. So I'm going to ask Brother Sheikh Sadiq if he could. Should we start with the first paragraph? I think we'll start with the first paragraph. We may even, definitely the third paragraph. We definitely going deep into the third paragraph. Let's do the first. Let's do the first and the third. Let's start off with the first one, and then we'll skip to the third. Islam, you got the floor.
A divine warning by the prophets for the nations. Citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitution, are all of one family bearing one free national name.
Let's stop right there. Sheikh. Government. Well, what does he mean? So let's just take a look at. Type in
oh, you muffled, Chief.
Islam, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it better? Am I clear?
Yeah, you clear.
All right, so let's look at what a free national government is. Do we got a good link? Not federal government. All right, instead of saying free national government, we'll just go with national government and see if we can just get a basic definition, and then we'll tie in the free. All right, the same thing keep popping up. So let's see here. Okay, no. This looks good. Looks so good. Free dictionary right here. I wanted it to be simple and not have to spend a lot of time on it. Okay, that's national unity government. What is this? All right, you know what? We'll just use we'll use study.com. Okay, so this is study.com, which I actually use during school. Definition of a national government. A national government is the government or political authority that controls a nation. At minimum, a national government requires a national army, enough power over its states or provinces to set and maintain foreign policy, and the ability to collect taxes. Beyond that, a national government can be anything from a dictatorship to a loose federation of states. Let me stop right there for a second. That's a national government. When we say free national government, and under a free national government, we're not referring to a dictatorship or a loose federation of states. All right. Maybe it was a loose federation of states back under the Articles of Confederation, but ever since the current Constitution, the United States of America has fulfilled the criteria of this being a national government. But again, it could be various different forms of government, but it's just the government that controls the entire nation, right? So our free national government, again, it provides certain liberties and freedoms under the Republican system that you don't find in any government, ancient or modern. The level of freedoms and liberties that are afforded to American citizens under the Constitution prior to the Reconstruction era, where many liberties began to get eroded over time. All right, but let's continue.
Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables and are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them.
Let's stop right there, because see, these individuals that are sovereign citizens don't even know this is talking about them. Let's read it again. Those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classed as undesirables. These same individuals, United States of America is a corporation. I'm sovereign. I ain't a citizen of the United States of America. I'm not the all caps. Da, 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 da. These are individuals who are classed as undesirables, not just among the government, but among regular, hardworking, everyday Americans. Look at you as scam artists, as con artists, looking for, scheming to find a way to not have to work in your life. That's how they view you. And going back to the definition of a national government, right? Was it the national government that I wanted to look at? Okay, no. We'll stay on this train. We'll stay on this train. But so they're free national. So those who fail to recognize the free national name of their constitutional government are classes undesirables, and not only are you undesirable, you subject to all inferior names. That's why they labeling you sovereign citizens and paper terrorists, and giving you the type of charges and prison stints that Moors are receiving for nonviolent crimes. It's because you fail to recognize your the free national name of the constitutional government, of your constitutional government, which the prophet's going to illuminate later on in this. So you can't get around the prophet. You think that you can. You think you're so clever and smart because our people don't read enough. Even those who say that they Moors don't even read like that. Because if they did, they would know you for the frauds that you are. So they are subject to all inferior names and abuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon them. Because you're not recognizing your own government. What government coming to rescue you? Huh? You sovereign, your government's supposed to come rescue you. But oh, wait, you're powerless. You have no international alliances. No nation on the planet is coming to your rescue. And the one government that recognizes you as something relative to them, the only government on the planet, No other government does. For most of us, anyway. You don't want to recognize that government. And then when they do you dirty, you want to cry foul. But you don't got a government of your own, and they know this. You think the FBI with this state-of-the-art technology, it doesn't know just about how many members you have, how many active members, what your financial resources are, what properties you may own? Huh? Of course they do. And they know that you're weak and that you can't overpower them. That was never the prophet's aim. So let's see what his aim was. Islam, Sheikh, you can continue.
And it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the names and principles that delude to slavery.
Islam. The prophet is talking about you. You think because you calling yourself a Moor now and you not going by a Negro, black, or colored, that he's not talking to you. Because you know, whatever method you choose, whether you have your L or your name legally or not, because if you're not recognized in the United States of America, you may try to delude yourself into believing that you don't have to get your name corrected with them, as if your records are going to be recognized internationally. But let's look at that a little closer. And it is a sin. It is a prophet of Allah telling you of a sin. And he's speaking to us. And it is a sin for any group of people. It don't matter what you call yourself. It is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government. That's why in the laws of the prophet, in the divine constitution and bylaws, it forbids violating the constitutional laws. This man is consistent in his works. Y'all are the inconsistent ones. Propping up the Constitution, how you gonna use it and United States codes and da against the government. Meanwhile, you don't even want to be considered a citizen or having these constitutional protections. But then you want to claim them when it's convenient. You the inconsistent one, not the prophet. But you make the prophet look like he don't know what he's talking about when you go saying his name and then teaching stuff that's contradicting him. You're giving the prophet Noble Drew Ali, the Moorish Temple of America, a bad name. You could just say I'm a Moor. Nah, I got my own thing. Nah, I don't follow the prophet Noble Drew Ali. I ain't got nothing bad to say about him. I'm just doing my own thing. You could do that, but you're taking his name and saying that you're teaching what the prophet taught, and you're not. He said, I'm sorry, I went down too far. He said, is a sin for any group of people to violate national constitutional laws of a free national government and to cling to the names. And y'all more stop right there. Well, I ain't clinging to the name Negro, Black, and Colored. And the principles that delude to slavery. This new age Moorishism ain't nothing but a repackaged Negroism. And that's why y'all love it. Because you get to be a Negro in a fez, but say you are Moor. You get to keep all your bad habits, all your sins, all your wickedness. You get to keep all of that and just put a fez on. You get to smoke your spliffs, you get to drink your alcohol, you get to hit the club, and you just throw a fez on whenever you get in legal trouble. I'm a sovereign Moorish national. You can't da.
Working.
This is the spirit that y'all Moors are operating under outside of the temple. And then, if that's not bad enough, you demonize the temple. It's like it never dawns or occur on Moors that many Moors just didn't understand the works of the prophet. They were just good-hearted. Even some sheiks among us don't really understand the works of the prophet, but it's not because they bad people. It just wasn't their charge to carry it out. They charged was to keep them doors open, and you don't even give them honors for that. You won't even give them honors for that. You demonize the temple. And then as soon as a Moor say anything about Moors outside of the temple, it's like, oh, you're not practicing love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Now you want to throw the prophet at me. But you want to violate his laws every day, but then throw him at me as soon as I call you on it. All right. So the principles that delude to slavery are, again, people who violate the free national laws or violate the national constitutional laws of the free national government of the United States of America. And this is what you Moors are performing every day. See, we don't deny that the current operational system is based upon a fraud. We don't deny that. We challenge the 14th Amendment. We challenge the 15th Amendment. We challenge a lot of things that Moors are challenging now, but our basis of challenging it is two different, it's coming from two different places. You saying the United States of America don't have no authority. We saying the United States of America does have authority, but there is authority that's being assumed that is not constitutionally mandated. There are things that the government is forbidden to do. And if they do it, don't have the force of law that the Constitution gives the government. There's specific clauses in the Constitution that denies the government from doing certain things. And that's what we challenge in the court. Like any other person who feels like their constitutional rights are being violated, we utilize the First Amendment and petition our government for redress of grievances. It's a difference. And so when we go into the courtrooms, we're not going into the courtroom as an enemy. We go into a courtroom as a special case, a special set of circumstances. And not because we special, because this fraud took place and that Allah had to send us a prophet to get this correct. So we go in court under special circumstances. But we not above the law. Islam, Sheikh, if you can, see, now this is the third, see, this verse, right, this verse, this paragraph, the third paragraph of the divine warning by the prophet exposes you Moors. Right here. This is all you need to read to know that these Moors are full of it. This is all you need to read. Because the prophet defines what the Moorish divine and national movement is. And he makes no exceptions. And if you don't fall within the framework of how the prophet defined it, you might have some Moorish movement, but you ain't part of the prophet's Moorish movement if you ain't following this. So I'm going to get to deep to start us off at the top of the third paragraph.
Islam. There is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement.
Wait.
You muted, Chief.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so keywords, Moors. Keywords. He said that there is but one issue. There's only a single issue. So if Moors is telling you it's a whole bunch of stuff, and it seems overly complex and super complicated, I get it. The way we demonstrate, we make it seem so simple. It's no way it took Moors 100 years. They still ain't figured this out, wasn't able to do such and such with it. I get it. It's just too simple. It got to be something majorly complicated or complex for us to get out of this situation. Because if it was that simple, it would have been accomplished already. I get it. But this ain't according to me. This is according to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. He said, there is but one issue. Not 5, not 7, not 12, not 3, not 19. One issue for them to be recognized by this government. Is this what y'all trying to do? Y'all want to be recognized by the United States of America, but at the same time, you don't want to recognize the United States of America. You want them to recognize you without you recognizing them. That's what you want. But this is not how the prophet set it up. He said there's one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth. Why of this government and then of the earth? Why not just of the earth, period? Because through this government, you can get international recognition. Because the United States recognizes you, is going to back you, is going to affix their seal to validate you. Great Britain ain't going against it. China's not going against it. India's not going against it. Iran is not going against it. Okay, Ireland is not going against it. France is not going against it. Senegal, Zimbabwe, they're not going against it. And that's why the prophet prefaced it to say, through this government. Because if you look at Acts 6, hold on, I'm going to pull out Acts 6 for a second. I'm going to pull out Acts 6. Because see, y'all gotta start beginning looking at all this stuff and then tying it together. So let's see, divine constitution.
I got Acts 6 if you need it.
Yeah, I need to look at it anyway. So it's just a little short thing right here. I'm not even gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna read this little part right here. It says, this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be what? To be recognized by the government in which they live. All right, he's not talking about, oh, well, this was Morocco and the Sultan Muhammad ibn Abdullah in 1789 and Treaty of Peace and Friendship, and this is really Morocco, and that's the government in which we live that he's talking about. No, he's not. Read the rest of the document. The government in which you live is where you're supposed to proclaim your free national name in order to be what? To be recognized. Okay? So now let's go back. Let's go back to the divine warning. And he said, and it comes only through, actually, I'm going to let the sheik start from the top again, and then we're going to go into that next part.
There is but one issue for them to be recognized by this government and of the earth, and it comes only through the connection of the Moorish divine national movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world.
So stop right there. Stop right there. I mean, I don't know how more simple the prophet could have made this. And Moors are still lying. They like, the Moorish divine national movement. But I created this organ group to fulfill the works of the prophet. No, you didn't. You're lying.
That's right.
You are a liar, sir or ma'am. Because the prophet just said it right there. Before any of us were breathing oxygen, he said this. Which the Moorish divine national movement is what? Is incorporated in this government. Oh, the Moorish movement, the divine national movement, it was incorporated back when we still had sultans. Stop lying. You got to make up a whole bunch of stuff to make your story make sense because you're a liar. That's what liars do. But see, here we understand that the truth is supreme. The truth is ought, and ought is Allah. So we're not going to let you get away with the falsehood in the name of the prophet.
That's right.
He already spoke. He has spoken. We just reiterating what he said. We're repeating to you and giving you that divine remembrance of a time when the prophet of Allah walked this earth to redeem you from your sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of a life with your Father God Allah. But you don't even want to read his works to know that these people are lying to you. He said the Moorish divine national movement is incorporated in this government and recognized by all other nations of the world. That's why he said this government first. United States of America. The same government that you saying don't have no authority. The same government that you saying is de facto and it was dissolved and they went Sindai or Sinadi and it was dissolved and the government's not even operating constitutionally anymore. There is no United States of America anymore. All these lies to take the people from what the prophet created and draw them to you, what you created, and put yourself in the place of the prophet. That's what you were attempting to do. But we sheiks, we see you. We are the vanguards of the Moorish movement. We are the chief protectors of the Islamic creed here in the West. We're not going to let you get away with that. And we're going to continue giving you this work straight from the prophet. Can we continue, Sheikh?
Through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights, unmolested by other citizens. Keep going.
No, we stop right there. That's the purpose.
That's right.
That's the purpose. For us to see our divine rights unmolested by other citizens. That the Constitution will protect us as much as it protected a so-called free white person or free white man in the 1790s. In the early 1800s. We want that level of constitutional protection and rights, freedoms, and liberties granted and afforded to us by the Constitution. That's what we want. And we don't want other citizens to be able to decide and determine whether or not we receive these rights or not, because they're not privileges, they're rights. Okay? And so this Moorish divine national movement, this is what the prophet said is going to save the people, not what you created. Then one of the biggest lies they tell. Oh, well, the prophet, he just came to bring the religion. And, he brought the religion and stuff. And like, we supposed to bring they didn't understand national movement. We brought the national movement. You're a liar. It was divine and national from the very beginning. Before you had a face to fix to tell that lie, it was already set. Let's go down to the Actually, let's finish off that paragraph. You start from the end through it.
And through it, they and their children can receive their divine rights unmolested by other citizens.
Continue, please, to the end of the paragraph.
Oh, excuse me. That they can cast a free national ballot at the polls under the free national constitution of the state's government and not under a granted privilege as has been the existing condition for many generations.
Islam. So that's a very important part right there, because Moors, when your knowledge base is limited, your ability to distinguish and discern what's being said becomes a huge challenge. And this is why you need to walk through a school. They tell you to stay away from the temple. Don't go to the Moorish Science Temple of America. Agents. They're going to put you back in slavery. But your brothers and professors, they're going to put you back in slavery. And so you don't get the teachings of the prophet. You get the quotes and excerpts that they give to the prophet. They know different. And again, we're not violating Act 3 by saying this. They're no different than Christians, because Christians don't go through the Bible cover to cover. They don't give you every verse. They cherry pick and hand pick specific verses, and then they talk about it. There's no raising your hand and asking questions or getting further clarity on it, as we do every week in our meetings. There's none of that. They gonna give a sermon. They gonna speak. You gonna listen. If you feel good or you don't, put some money in the collection plate, and that's it. And again, we're not speaking radical against the church. If you're a Christian, et cetera, this is the format. I was originally raised in a church, so I'm not speaking from an outsider perspective. I'm speaking from an insider perspective. I know how this goes. There is no there is a Sunday school, but that's specifically for children. Our Sunday school, we educate and grown adults because y'all need it.
Oh, that's right.
So it says that the divine rights unmolested by other citizens, that they can cast a free national ballot at the polls. What are they talking about? They're talking about voting. Or what is the prophet, talking about? He's talking about voting. He says voting under the free national constitution of the state's government. What does that mean? The free national constitution of the state government. And then he says, and not under a granted privilege as had been the existing condition for many generations. We already covered this. You might not understand what he's talking about, but we understand clearly he's talking about the 15th Amendment. That was the granted privilege. How do we know this was the granted privilege? Because they started creating laws that basically prevented us from being able to vote. So then they say in a law that we'll be able to vote and that Congress will be able to ensure this through appropriate legislation. But then all the state governments start passing laws that prevent us from, you got to be a property owner. You got, the literacy test, various different things to make sure that we couldn't vote. And this is what he means by granted privilege of being able to cast a vote, and how it won't be the case anymore. Through what? Through the Moorish Divine National Movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all nations of the world. The Moorish movement is incorporated. If you're not part of that corporation, you're not part of the movement. Somebody, I'm mute. Am I missing something? Somebody let me know.
You on point, Sheikh.
Well, thank you. Because if I'm misquoting the prophet, please, for the etiquette, don't do it for me. Don't do it for the education of the people and the babies. If we're not telling the truth, we want to be exposed because we want to be on the side of truth. We don't want to be on the opposite side of truth. So if we lying on these Moors, we want to be able to give them a formal apology before they even hear this.
You're sticking to the prophet's word.
But from where I'm sitting, from what I'm reading, it sounds to me like the Moorish Divine National Movement is the Moorish Scientific America, which was incorporated in 1928, which we know through the back of the 101s.
Islam.
And also in the Moorish Quran, he references incorporating the temple. Right. So how are you, Mr. Moore or Mrs. Moore, noble Moabitus, how are you a part of the Moorish Divine National Movement when the prophet defined it, the founder defined it as being what was incorporated in 1920? How could you be outside of that and be a part of it? You're a spin-off group or spin-off movement from the prophet. You see, there are individuals who make allegations about the Nation of Islam, but we're not going to get into that. But y'all, this ain't no allegation. You will spin off on the Prophet Noble Drew Ali according to how he defined it. You're utilizing his name. You're utilizing his movement, the name of his movement. You're utilizing parts of his literature. You're utilizing parts of his holy book and his text. All the while teaching things contrary to him and profiting off of it. Deceiving people and misleading people. Now, I don't know if y'all all doing it wrong intentionally. Some of y'all may have, heard a charismatic leader and just became a carbon copy of that charismatic leader without studying the prophet. Shame on you for not doing your due diligence, but you're not as culpable as those who know for sure that what they telling ain't true. And still telling you to lie in order to receive whatever they're getting from you. Right? So is the prophet talking about the United States of America? Is he talking about us being citizens? Does he recognize the United States of America? Well, let's look at the next paragraph then.
You who doubt whether I, the prophet, and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those that know law in the city hall and among the officials in your government and ask them under intelligent tone. They will be glad to render you a favorable reply, for they are glad to see me bring you out of the darkness and into the light.
All right, stop right there, Sheik. This sentence right here, it exposes you Moors. Because the same city officials that you saying ain't real government officials, and that they haven't been since, whatever time frame that you claim, right? The prophet told you, if you don't believe what he's saying is right, to go to those that know what? That know law. All right? He didn't send you to other so-called Negroes, blacks, and colors who didn't even know that they was Moors if it wasn't for him. He didn't send you to them. He sent you to those that know law, that run government. He said in the city hall and among the officials in your government. Not in their government. Oh, the Albion, the European, his government is the United States of America, and our government is the Moorish government, and that's the dual seal on the back of the dollar bill, and da-da-da-da-da. Just say you're not with the prophet. Then make those claims. Then we can debate you on the virtue of those claims. But don't say you with the prophet and then say stuff that contradict him. Like, you know, the Moorish movement, man, it's in such this it's like, you know, you have these situations where men are afraid of confrontation. So it's like you promoting wickedness or evil to want to debate your brother or sister when you already know that they're leading people in the wrong direction. But that's wicked and wrong. But what they're doing when the person winds up listening to them, and then they're separated from their children for a year, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and they're able to raise their babies, whose fault is that then? Who gets the blame for that? Who cares about them? Those babies whose mother and father who were impressionable and believed in what these Moors were saying because they used the name of the prophet, and then they wound up losing their freedom. And so they get custody of their kids taken away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Who's really being hurt? But y'all making it seem like we sticking a dagger in one of our Moors' chests just by saying, all right, well, you saying this, we say that's not aligned with the prophet. Let's have a build on it. Let's have a discussion and put it out publicly. No slandering, no cursing, no over talking one another. We have different, time interviews to make these distinctions and all of that, and allow each other not just to actively listen, to respond to each other's points, and so that the people can make a decision to do better. But the instant you get challenged, now you want to get your effeminate feelings. And again, it's just not a disrespect to women. Effeminacy is for women. You're supposed to be feminine as a woman. But you as a man, you should be able to, whatever type of conflict that it has to be on, whether it's mental combat, whether it's physical combat, you should be able to step up to the plate as a man to defend whatever you got to defend. So if you think you're saving the people, then why not build with us? Because we exposing the truth. Don't worry about it in debate. I won't call you a liar. You ain't got to worry about that. We don't do the name calling. That's why we're not pointing at any particular individual. We just build straight on the science to come to where we come to. But the prophet said the officials in your government. So wait a minute. I thought we were separate. I thought we had our own government. Oh no, the officials in your government. It's the sheiks of the Moorish side of America. Well then who are you? If you created an organization 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years after the prophet and claiming some authority, what official do you represent in what government? Because it can't be nothing written here, according to the prophet. He don't know you or what you made up, and he don't recognize it. And the proof is in his own words.
Islam, that's right.
So let's continue, Sheik.
Okay.
You know what? We don't gotta read. Hold on, wait. Actually, go ahead, because that's at the end of the sentence. It's a long sentence, that other one. So let's start at money doesn't make the man, and go ahead from there.
Money doesn't make the man. It's free national standards and power that makes a man and nation. The wealth of all national governments, gold and silver and commerce belong to the citizens alone. And without your national citizenships, by name and principles, you have no true wealth. And I am hereby calling on all true citizens that stand for a national free government and the enforcement of the Constitution to help me in my great missionary work, because I need all support from all true American citizens of the United States of America.
Stop right there. So there we go. His great missionary work, he needs support from all true American citizens of the what? Of the United States of America. Nah, U.S.A. That's Unity Salvation or Law. No. That's United States of America. Why is the prophet bringing up the United States of America in the Constitution? Well, let's read the very next sentence. Come on, Sheik.
Help me to save my people who have fallen from the constitutional laws of the government.
Islam, keep going. Keep giving them that word. Keep going.
I am dependent on your support to get them back to the constitutional fold again, that they will learn to love instead of hate and will live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America.
Nah, that can't be right. Hold on a second. Wait, no. That's not right. That's not right there. That's not right there. Hold on a second. What did you just say? Did you say supporting our free national constitution of the United States of America? Did the prophet call the Constitution of the United States of America ours?
Islam, you sure did.
They returned it to the constitutional fold of government. This is why he's asking these other American citizens, all true American citizens, to help him, to get the rest of us that are clinging to names and principles of delusions of slavery, to get to the constitutional fold of government.
Go ahead, you teach him.
To support our free national constitutional government. So our government officials. You see? So the prophet had exposed you before you was born.
Yes.
The wickedness that you think you masterminded, he already saw you for what you were. And exposed you so that sheiks like myself, like Sheikh Sadiq, like Sheikh Muhammad, like Sheikh Tunde, Assistant Grand Sheikh Tunde Sadat, Rael, like Grand Sheikh Yusef Bey, like the many other sheiks and sheikesses throughout the United States of America. He left us the breadcrumbs. He left us the message. He left us the program, the protocol, the blueprint. So this ain't Amir L puffing up his chest like he's some super, bad, guy or whatever. Like I'm that dude. It ain't me. The prophet saw you. I'm just a good student. I listened to what the prophet said when he said to read his works. Like if you doubt whether he's a prophet, and again, I don't want to get into Moorish Hadith too much, but obviously he did say in the Moorish literature, which I believe we read last week, you have to study your Moorish Quran, your lessons. The Moorish literature. Well, he didn't say Moorish literature, but the teachings of the prophet that you have to study if you're going to be a good sheikh. Or even a good member, for that matter. But especially sheiks. Why? Because we are the vanguards of the Moorish movement. It's not somebody outside of the temple.
Islam, Sheikh. Just to add on real quick, because you definitely doing your thing, but you reminded me of how we want to read a little portion of Caveat Emptor.
Go for it, Sheikh.
Not the whole thing, but of course it's part of our literature, so hopefully you should read it. But I just want to go into a little part where it says this is so because
it's not, Sheikh. I don't want you to rush through it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Just, whatever you wanted to get out, you can get that out. Don't worry about my time or nothing like that. I ain't concerned with that. It's
all right. Sheikh. Matter of fact, all right. So then go into it and read a little bit. Caveat emptor, take it from the top. Moors are men, upright and independent and fearless, who care for their loved ones and follow the prophet to a destiny which is not uncertain nor unknown. They are fortified, impregnable doctrine built upon love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and is therefore folly at its greatest height for smelly culprits with their insidious plans to invade such realm. So even then, like you said, the prophet put this together before these people was even coming up with these plans, before they was even born. He knew that there was people going to come in, was going to try and switch it up and do their own thing. But then continuing on, they try, but their own bad planning bring down wrath upon their heads like swords of old domiciles had. Intrigue and scrupulous cunnings find a difficult path to travel within the ranks of the Moors. like those who, like you said, outside, those who not studying the prophet teachings, and they try to come in with all this and that. They bring in the sovereign citizens and all this other type of things. Is they find it a rough, hard path. And now here it is, like we are on the path to truth when we studying the prophets where he brought us, and we staying on it. It's rough because people rather listen to nonsense rather than the truth. But like you demonstrating today, you breaking down the clear water and dirty water to help give them more understanding. But again, also again, caveat emptor, this is so because the Moorish movement has been well planned. Again, the Moorish, this is because the Moorish movement has been well planned by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, whose latent powers are abundant, unknown, and may be called upon in action as a matter of defense at any moment. You got to be able to defend what the prophet brought us. That's why you got to study it. And here it is, like I said, he put it as a matter of defense. You got to stand on it, as we always do. Prophet Noble Drew Ali knows the people within his ranks who are interested. They are the vanguard of the Moorish, they're the vanguard of the movement as the Moorish hordes increase in America. All the Moors are active, not passive. And members' interests can only be in one direction. And having traveled over the road the years before, the prophet knows where every member is along the road. Again, breaking that down real quick, we all got to be focused, moving in one direction. We know our people in the weakened state or fallen state of humanity, so we got to take the prophet works, things that he brought us, in the path that he started, and we have to stay on that path and continue. And of course, again, going for those who are trying to bring dishonor to this movement, whether willingly or unknowingly, excuse me. A few feet below is another road where schemers work, where traders grin and culprits bask in the sun. Now, if you go on YouTube, right, and you see a lot of things it goes in on that. They think they are in the same road with true Moors, but Moors are high above on a pinnacle where they might view the destructionists as they fall for the last time and their bones bleach in the sun. That's what I'm saying. For those who was not on the path, like the ones that we be talking about, who's coming and who's not doing the right thing and following the prophets, we know where it's going to go and we see where it's going to go, but for them and for us, but we have to stay on the prophet's path and stick to his teachings. Islam, but like I said, you was going in and you just made me think of that caveat emptor, so I just wanted to add that on. Islam, Sheikh.
Yeah, Islam, Sheikh, well demonstrated. Yeah, I mean, obviously I was using certain language from it, you know what I'm saying, the vanguards of the Moorish movement and stuff like that. But, you know, you being a Sheikh, you know what I'm saying, and a member of the Moorish Science of America that studies and is devoted to his divine creed and things of that nature, you already knew, you know what I'm saying, pretty much where I was coming from.
Islam. And that's
That,
an example, because anybody who studies the prophets, just by using, like you just demonstrated, just by hearing certain things, oh, wait a minute, their mind should bounce to other things from the prophet. Islam.
yeah, Islam, Sheikh. Thank you for that. And at this point, I'm gonna open the floor specifically for the Sheiks, if there's anything that they wanted to add on or say. Obviously, you can reserve them at any point in the meeting to interject, but I just wanted to give a little moment now, if any Sheiks wanted to add on.
So just to add on real quick, even still, like you doing a great demonstration, but even a few weeks ago when you were demonstrating on the sovereign citizens, again, you studied the prophet teachings, his literature, and those, I believe it was 2 demonstrations you did breaking down the sovereign citizens movement. Once you understand both of those, that right there, you got some clean water and you got some dirty water right there. Islam.
Islam, always appreciated. Sheik, always appreciated. Definitely. Any Moors wanna, other than the Sheiks, wanna chime in at this time?
Islam.
Islam, brother Jeff.
Islam. First I rise to my highest height, give the proper praise of Father God Allah. Give honors to all prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Christians, and prophets in these last days, time prophet Noble Drew Ali. I greet everyone in peace. My name is Jeffrey Long, It goes to even what we was discussing last week, about language, right? The language we use is confusing. Like, even confuses me sometimes. I'm studying my native tongue, and it's plain. Like, there's no no confusion. It's what it is in the word. So it doesn't mean like double meanings. And depending on how it's applied, what I'm learning is like we take parts. The way we learn, we take parts of something, right? And we think that's it. And then we can't stand on it because we don't get the complete understanding and how it's applied during the conversation. So me learning more science, right, is vast. So to complete my understanding, I have to attend, my Sunday class to get a better footing. So that would complete my understanding. And I'm learning that our people, right? They're good with just part of something, right? They're not opening to the whole thing, and they stay stuck in that spot because that's where they're comfortable at, And I'm not no teacher, but I understand why the teacher prepares a curriculum before, the day before the class, because they have different individuals they have to teach and have to reach them. So they prepare their curriculum according to, the individuals in their class, the best to better, do their job to reach the children. Because if they can't do it, then they're not a teacher. So I just wanted to say that. I yield the floor.
Islam, brother Jeff, appreciate you more. Appreciate you. So yeah, it's a lot of confusion, not only because, like, I don't think that the prophet's message is too complicated or too difficult for people to understand. I think that people they think so little of the prophet subconsciously and think so highly of these other Moors. They'll buy these other Moors books and read those other Moors books cover to cover, but have yet to read the Moorish Quran from front to back. Have yet to read the 101s, or maybe they read the 101 because it's only, 101 questions with short answers. But you get the point. You didn't read the Moorish literature. You haven't read everything that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali wrote to have an understanding of his philosophy, his worldview, his perspective. And so I think that's where the confusion lies in, because you have a lot of people who, all right, well, he taught us he was Moors. Cool. All right, I'm gonna look up everything about Moors and then I'm gonna run with that. It's like, you don't have a strong foundation. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a school. It is a system that was erected for the re-education of our people, socially, politically, economically, in every facet of life on a scale that will affect a large number of people. We're supposed to be educated upon. So I'm glad you got your fast. I'm glad you got your turban. I'm glad that you identifying yourself as El or Bay. That's cool. But that's just the beginning, man. This is actually going to take us work to become free. And that's why we're not free. If you want to know the answer, our people have not been putting in the work. Point blank simple. Like, if you plant a seed, but it doesn't get water and sunlight, what do you expect for it to grow? This is the insanity that we're doing with the Moorish movement. We don't even have the foundational messages. And so, Moors are just all over the place. And so, then you'll study one aspect of the prophet because you're unbalanced. So a lot of Moors, they'll study law and they'll study the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but then they won't branch out from the root outward. So, Islam, for example, a lot of Moors don't understand Islam. They don't really understand that divine creed. And if the prophet is propagating the faith of Muhammad in America, then we need to be aware of what that faith is and what it entails. Because, obviously we have a religious aspect to our incorporation, although it's Rotarian in nature. Again, divine and national, it still has a very huge religious component. And the reason why that the reason why that's important is because we're a very immoral and wicked people, and we can't allow people to just use their individual moral compass, because they've been corrupted by the wickedness of living it within the society. And so, in order to learn how to live right, how to live righteous, how to live according to the will of Allah, you gotta study Islam. And again, I'm not telling you to go to a mosque and et cetera, just understanding and knowing just having a basic understanding of Islam, the holy days, the narratives, what's an ayat, just basic stuff. You don't gotta speak fluent Arabic and memorize the Quran front and back to be able to have basic knowledge of what your lineage is. You also have to have knowledge of the Bible. There's a lot of things that you can go into deeper, but first study the Prophet. That way, at least when you're looking into stuff that's complicated, you know what you're looking for. And so a lot of times we have people come in the temple and they ask, yo, I swear we get this question. I guarantee any one of the sheiks will validate what I'm saying. They will always ask the question, Islam, Sheikh Amir, yeah, what's going on, more? Yeah, that was a good demonstration, I wanted to know, I'm saying, I'm new to Moorish science, whatever. What book should I get? What book should I start reading? This is the question that boys would ask. And then I don't know what they expect to hear. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to go get like a laundry list of all these complicated, because if I give you this book that's 400 pages, and there's only certain parts of the book that even matter and are relevant in terms of what you need to know or what you need to extrapolate out of that book. Sometimes you can get a 500-page book only for 3 pages of information. And so the book that I recommend, whenever they ask me that question, what book should I get? Get you a Moorish Quran, get you a Quran Questions for Moorish Children, get you your Moorish literature, and get you a copy of the Resurrection book.
That's right.
And from there, you'll have a foundation to spread out further in Moorish science. So that way, when you read in the history book, you got chapter 47 to compare and contrast to see if the prophet was accurate. You see, when you study a certain elements of American history, prophet given dates, you can verify whether he's accurate in the dates and time frames and the description of the things that he's describing. But if you read that first and then the prophet second, confusion. You see?
Working.
I'm gonna give the floor to you right now. I just want to say this last part. This is what's motivating a lot of these demonstrations over the past couple of weeks, is that there's so much confusion in the Moorish movement. Moors rather, be Islam in the public, but disagreeing in private, and they're pretending like everything is okay, but really, they'll say one thing about one more group of Moors, like, you know how that go. But instead of, all right, we disagree fundamentally on this particular issue right here. Let's discuss this issue, because we agree on far more than we disagree. So let's talk about what we disagree on and come to an understanding. Even if our understanding is we're going to agree to disagree, I respect you doing your thing over there, and I'm going to do my thing over here. That eliminates a lot of the confusion, a lot of the problems and conflicts. Islam? So I want to pass the floor to Sheikh Sadiq. I think he has something he wanted to say, and we'll continue from there. We'll probably be ending the meeting soon, though, but I definitely want to allow Moors to express themselves. Islam?
Islam. No, I was just agreeing with you. I didn't really have nothing to add on.
Oh, okay, no problem. Is there anybody else that want to add on before we kind of wrap this up?
I just want to say great demonstration.
No doubt, brother Jeff. Appreciate you. All right, so again, we see this term United States of America. We see it being mentioned at least once, the Constitution. So Moors will, again, they will say the Prophet no bourgeois, but at the same time denounce the United States of America, which the Prophet does not do. clearly by what we've already read. They try to say the United States of America is not a legitimate government. Clearly, that's quite contrary to what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is saying. So any Moorish group who bases their foundation on we are separate from the United States of America and we're not subject to the laws of the United States of America is not of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. If there's nothing else you take away from this particular demonstration, it's that. And if you disagree with me, come to our Sunday platform. We can build on it. We can have a discussion. Debate there's no way we'll have a discussion with you and not put it up. So if you expose us in that discussion, it'll be right on our channel for the world to see. So, but if you disagree with me, but you don't have the heart to come and challenge this, then more than likely you coming from an emotional place. You're not coming from a place of logic, because if you come from a place of logic, it's just, he's wrong and simple. He's saying 2 + 2 ain't 4. All right, I got 2 units. I put 2 units together. That's 4. What are you talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted them up. You see what I'm saying? You could refute if you have a good argument. But if you don't have a good argument, your response but you don't like the outcome, then more than likely you coming from an emotional space and not an intellectual, logical one. And our people are way too emotional in 2021. We way too moved and governed by emotion. And that's another major issue for us. We want to cry unfair and foul and want to appeal to people's emotions and their morality all the time. But then don't make logical sense. So, do we want to go to this one? Okay, yeah. So we covered the first paragraph. We covered the third paragraph, and we covered the fourth paragraph. So we almost read it straight through. This is how consistent the Prophet is in this particular message. And how dare you Moors in 2021 come out here and say that the Moors in the temple are agents when you got people outside of the temple using the Prophet's name and it teaches something totally different than what the Prophet taught. How dare you call the sheiks in the temple agents? Am I saying there was no agents in the Moor? Of course you had agents and informers. Whatever organization you create, you're going to have those. But they kept them doors open. And they kept the name of Prophet Noble Drew Ali on their lips and on their tongue. They let the world know who we were. They taught about nationality and birthright, even if they don't have a deep understanding of it. There were Moorish Science of America, Temple of America centers in different states throughout the United States because men passed that legacy down on, or men and women, Moabs and Moabites passed those legacies down to future generations. All the way 100 years later, that sheiks such as myself and the sheiks that you have available on the call and throughout the United States, we are a legacy of the Prophet. Like literally, you can trace our sheikdom, who we are as sheiks, and go back to each sheik that made them a sheik, that made them a sheik, and you'll trace our sheikdom to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. But then these individuals will come out and say they carry the legacy of the Prophet. But then when you look at the Prophet's works, we see that's impossible. They're mischaracterizing the Moorish movement. They're mischaracterizing the Prophet's perspective and position. They making it seem like this is common knowledge. Everybody knows the United States of America ain't real, and the Prophet Noble Drew Ali even knew it. And these Moors today are agents. This is what I'm hearing on social media. Stop learning Moorish science on YouTube. Stop learning Moorish science on Facebook, because you're not learning Moorish science that way. You're getting truth mixed with falsehood, and it's causing you confusion. And if you want to alleviate that confusion, go to the school known as the Moorish Science Temple of America. At least you can get basic degrees where you can use your 5 senses, use that third eye, that eye that be single, in order to make a determination. But if you don't know the words of the Prophet at all, or if you barely recognize them, if somebody says something to you that the prophet said, you don't know whether he said it or not, then you're in no position to make any distinction on what is of the prophet of the movement and what is not. You still need to study more before this conversation could take place. But again, these types of meetings and these types of demonstrations that we put out on YouTube is for the edification of the people, so that they stop getting lied to, so they stop spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on nationality packs to some random boy in the hood that just decided to use the prophet's name and came up with some scheme. Or they lose their freedom and getting locked up and getting years in prison, all because they were fooled and conned. But again, the accountability is not all on the crooks. You didn't study the prophet's works, but you love his name, but you didn't study his works. And that's what made you susceptible to these fleecers and robbers. So we're gonna go into probably like the next paragraph, whatever, and that'll be it. No, you know what? Let's go into the last paragraph, because it's just beating a dead horse at this point. I think I emphatically proved that these Moors is not a part of the Moorish movement. They're not with the prophet, and that they're using the prophet's name, but they're not following the prophet. But, you know, we're going to put the nail in the coffin with the last paragraph. That's going to kind of obviously. So what is the last paragraph in a body of work called? Anybody? This is basic English.
Conclusion.
I hear somebody. You have an introduction, right? You have the body, and then you have the conclusion. All right. So what is the conclusion? It doesn't just summarize, but encapsulates, you know, it strings together all the premises and arguments in such a way that it kind of ties it up in a neat little bow, if I could say it like that. You know, it enables you to go from A to Z in that one paragraph. Like if you just read a conclusion of a work, you can get a pretty good idea of what the work was about and what the author was trying to argue. So I'm going to ask the sheep. Now pay attention to when you hear the words America, American citizens, United States of America, historical references to laws and different things. This is all related. All right, so you see Jim Crow and segregate. This is stuff that we know really happened. The prophet ain't in this fantasy realm that these Moors have sold you. Islam, Sheikh. I'm gonna let you start at the top of the last paragraph.
Islam. So I, the prophet, am hereby calling aloud with a divine plea to all true American citizens to help me to remove this great sin which has been committed and is being practiced by my people in the United States of America.
Stop right there. Hold on a second. So these Moors, they always want to, you know, the European, the Albion this, the European did that, da, 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 da. Is the prophet blaming the European in this particular work, or is he blaming us, the so-called Negro, black, colored, that we are identifying as Moorish American due to the prophet? Is he blaming us, Asiatics, here in America, or is he blaming the European? He said he's making a plea to all true American citizens, which we know would include the European, to help me to remove this great sin, which has been committed and is being practiced by, not only are they committing this sin, but they're practicing it by my people of the United States of America. Who are the prophet Noble Jawali's people? Let's play. That's what I'm saying. Moors will read something and then they'll try to twist the words like it's not talking about what it's talking about. They're going to play dumb. His people that he's talking about is us, the so-called Negro. So he's blaming us. He's saying that it's something that we're supposed to change and do. He's not condemning the government like these Moors are doing. He's not doing that. So, okay, I think I stopped you right there. So I don't want to go no further. But he said in the United States of America. He's nobody. It can be no mistake who he's talking about. He ain't talking about no other group of Asiatics, and he's not talking about the European. He wants us to be saved, but we are the ones committing the sin. So in essence, he's kind of saying to save us from ourselves.
Right.
Okay? But let's see why he explains why we're committing this sin. Because this same sin is being committed today, albeit not just in the form that he's mentioning there, but in a form that we see in this Moorish movement that pretends to be the Moorish movement that the Prophet founded, but it's outside of the temple. So let's see what explanation the Prophet gave as to how or why we're committing this sin.
Because they know it is not the true and divine way, and without understanding, they have fallen from the true light into utter darkness of sin. And there is not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc.
Islam. So those of us who have had the pleasure to procure a copy of the Negro, the Black, the Moor, know that the Moors under International Grand Sheikh F. under his particular works, that he had recognition in Morocco, the Kingdom of Morocco, on the continent of Africa. And that particular relationship was mutual. As in, we recognized them and they recognized us. This is a documented and recorded relationships through the United Nations and all that, through the works of Grand Sheikh F. So he ain't talking about the Moors within the temple, because that even though Grand Sheikh F. did found the Moroccan Federation, etc., in that role of Moors found organizations outside of the temple, that's not the point. The point is propping that organization up as if it's a replacement to the temple, as if it was some unfinished work that the Prophet didn't do to create us a government because he didn't do it. That's a lie. Okay, so it says, because they know it is not the true and divine way. Our people know the way that we live in ain't right. You can ask them. And especially those crooks that are lying to you, you know they're not right. I mean, they know they're not right. They'll listen to this video and they'll be like, man, I'm glad them Brooklyn Moors don't got more followers. Man, I'm glad, you know what I'm saying, this video ain't out there. Because then we had to address this, man. I'll go broke. So check this. He said, without understanding, they have fallen from the true light into utter darkness of sin. Like again, the Prophet mentioned a sin earlier that we know that these Moors are practicing. They're not even recognizing the free national government, violating the constitutional laws, etc., because they don't recognize them. And it says, and there is not a nation on earth today that will recognize them socially, religiously, politically, or economically, etc. And we see that occurring not with the members in the Moorish Temple of America. We're able to, even Moors who are just strictly on the religious stuff and they're not really pushing no national agenda and things of that nature. They still able to meet with government, have different, conferences or, different, political things in office, whatever. There's a number more. Like I said, I don't want to put nobody's name in this because I don't want, I don't want no issues. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's not about, but we could see that Moors, they'll get certain, proclamations or something like that. Like they can get recognized to some degree in ways that these Moors are not being recognized socially, politically, religiously, or any of these, or economically. They find themselves on the fringes of society. These Moors have been telling people to get rid of their social security cards. And then when they're looking for employment, they can't work. And so now they on the outside looking in on the economic system. Because that social security number is a tax identification number. And without it, many employers won't employ. I mean, it is ways around it, EIN, whatever. But we ain't gonna get into all of that. You gotta go through your elbow. You gotta go around your elbow to get to your thumb. Like that's how, when it's not even that serious. All you have to do is just be under the constitutional framework, as we are under the policy of Abraham Lincoln. And then all of the stuff that they passed after that time period won't even apply to you. But you gotta throw away the whole government because you in your feelings. And somebody told you that this is what it was, and you haven't read the prophet. But it's okay, it's not too late for you. You could still redeem. Redemption is always possible if you're still drawing breath. But if you continue to commit the sin, then that's what it is. So socially, these Moors, obviously the news coverage, it's just bad publicity. They say any publicity is good. No, that publicity is not good. What you're seeing in major news syndications that are being broadcasted locally, nationally, as well as internationally, is painting these particular individuals in a bad light. And guess what? You're not bringing the temple down with you. They are not associating the Prophet Noble Drew Ali with those particular acts, even though you're using his name. Because Rome know you're not coming in the way, you're not coming through the doors of the Prophet. They know you're not. That's why he wrote so extensively in the ways that he wrote, to prevent people from like you from destroying and tarnishing the image that will affect future generations. And so they lump you in, not even with the Moors, they lump you in with the European sovereign citizens, right where that doctrine came from. But you don't want that brand. You want to be called Moorish, this, that, and the third. But you don't realize the damage you would be doing if they did. The media is not even, they're not even doing it. They're not even using this as an opportunity to bash the Moors and the Prophet, because the European was known to help the Prophet during this time. You just not coming the way of the Prophet. And that's why they're against you. But again, you want to cry foul. When you try to say that their entire society has no legitimacy and you don't have to obey an order or law or nothing, not a judge, not a nobody. Nobody in this nation has no authority to say nothing to you. So let's continue. But okay, so we see that socially, religiously, a lot of y'all Moors ain't even dealing with religion outside of the temple. Y'all making up your own stuff. And so no nation is recognizing that. Like, you don't even have an organized religion because you're not practicing Islamism, because that's the Prophet. You're not practicing Islam collectively under the, what they would call quote unquote Orthodox Islam in its various sects and branches or whatever. You're not doing none of that. You just doing your own personal thing, and you consider this stuff politically. But the problem is, politically, you're not being recognized. Economically, y'all not making no money. All you doing is discharging debt, which is resulting in a lot of y'all getting prison time. And so all of the categories in which the Prophet listed in this last paragraph, you're not being recognized under. But we got proof of our recognition under all of these. Socially, religiously, we got court cases showing we could keep our kids home on Fridays on a holy day. We got court cases where the Moors originally under the Prophet, they wasn't even allowed the Moors to come in the courtroom with their fezzers on. And Moors got that religious recognition. Okay? So politically, we've dealt with, like I said, we've dealt with various levels of government. What us Brooklyn Moors do on the public side is nothing in comparison to what we do on the private side. It's documents that will never be accessible to the public. It just won't be. Because we're not going to compromise the integrity of the Prophet's organization just to satiate you who don't even want to help. You just want to take it and use it for your own selfish gains and advantages. And then, regardless of what you did to put yourself in that position, or how it's going to impact the image of the movement, you don't care. And that's why we're the vanguards. And that's why these documents that we have, we safeguard them with our lives. And only those within the deeper inner brotherhood, known as Sheikdom, known as the adept chamber of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Third Heaven, will have access to this type of stuff. Only because they're in position to assist and in position to defend and protect and safeguard. And when the time comes, pass it on to the next who will carry that authority and that information. But let's continue. Because this stuff right here speaks profoundly, not just to what our people were doing at that time, but it speaks profoundly to what you Moors are doing now, which is why I think this is very divine timing to be reading this. In their present condition, Sheik, whenever you're ready.
In their present condition of their endeavorment, in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world, they will not refrain from their sinful ways of action, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation, and everything that brings harm to human beings on earth.
Islam, stop right there. This is beautiful right here. He said in their present condition of their endeavorment, right now what they doing, in which they themselves try to force upon a civilized world. According to the prophet, at the time that he wrote this, the world was already civilized. And so here you come in 2000 and something, trying to impose on a civilized world your way of doing things. Where outside of the Moorish, so-called Moorish movement, what you Moors are doing, where outside of this do we see things like this happening? Where, you know, you're in court for every little thing. It's always a tit for tat back and forth where you're constantly like, instead of fighting another nation on the battlefield in war, you want to go to the courtroom for every single little thing. When the First Amendment of the Constitution lets you know what that's for, to petition the government for redress of grievances. But since you say you're not a part of the government, you want to wage war on government, but then don't want to be called a terrorist. I think paper terrorism is fairly adequate when you consider that you don't give a crap about what you're doing to these people's lives. Oh, that judge doing his job? Oh, he's doing what they paid him to do and what he's been doing for 20 years of his life? Oh, forget that. Because he's doing it to me, I'm going to put a lien on his house that he paid off of. I'm going to put a lien on all his property where I'm going to mess his credit score up. I'm going to make it so he can't pay his children's student loans. I don't care because I'm not getting my way. And I'm a target. If a cop pull me over, I'm going to make him pay $15 million a minute. Even though he don't have that. It's like, yo, come on, man. This is what you're trying. What other nations come to America that are foreign to the jurisdiction do what y'all do? Exactly. This is talking about you. You trying to force this on us, I'm impropriate persona, or appropriate persona, so jurist, and this is every little thing. Why don't you just go to the government as a government and negotiate your terms and then be done with it? Nah, I'm going to wait till they bring me into court first and then I'm going to fight it. It's like, it doesn't even make any sense. You trying to impose a particular plan of action that's not in the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and when it's having the ill effects that it's having on the community, you want people speaking up against you to be quiet. Well, we're not going to be silenced. We're going to speak up on it. And it says they will not refrain from their sinful ways of action. So you don't want to stop doing what you're doing. You want to keep doing what you're doing because you got to stick it to the man. That's what you got to do. By any means, I'm going to stick it to the man. And so you already decided this is what you're going to do. I'm not going to pay no taxes here. I'm going to drive with my own Moorish tags. I'm going to get me a gun. I ain't going to get it registered because I don't got to do none of that because I'm above these laws. you would not refrain from your sinful ways, which is only causing confusion. And the confusion could be alleviated by you going straight to government before doing these actions. But since you don't recognize them, you don't even think it's a necessity to do that. And so now you're reactive instead of proactive. You're always responding to what they do to you. Tit for tat. As opposed to just getting it out the way one time. And it said, and their deeds have brought Jim Crowism, segregation. What are these programs? These programs were created to disenfranchise the so-called black, to prevent him from retaining any type of political, social, economic power, right? To prevent him from being able to partake in the society within America. Did the prophet say that the European brought about segregation and Jim Crow? Is he blaming the European for these things? No. He said it's these actions. And so you're creating actions in this day that's going to lead to a modern day Jim Crowism or segregation if you have your way and everybody follow you. It's these same kind of things violating the Constitution. This is not nothing that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali promoted. Again, if you don't agree with the Prophet, then stop using his name and say that. And then we won't argue that you contradicting the Prophet no more. We won't argue that. You can call yourself a Moor and not believe in the Prophet Noble Drew Ali or what he brought. He didn't invent the term. But when you're using his name, now you're a hypocrite. Now you're a liar, automatically, when you're not going with his program. You see how that works? So let's finish off. But again, this is talking about us getting back to the United States of America constitutional fold. This is what the Prophet was advocating for. Not creating a separate government like you Moors are talking about. That's his clean glass of water. Or me presenting his glass of water as clean. Because we didn't misquote or misinterpret any of his words. If you need the source, it is a divine warning by the Prophet for the nations. Look it up. There are many different sources that you could go to get this particular piece of Moorish literature. You don't have to take our word for it. But if everything we said is right and exact according to what he said, then Lucy, you got some splaining to do. You don't make no sense. You're going to have to explain why you're using the Prophet's name but not following him. Or how you are following him despite the way it looks like you're not. But let's wrap this up. We only got like 2 or 3 more sentences maybe.
And they fought the Southerner for all these great misuses. But I have traveled in the South and have examined conditions there. And it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. And I'm here.
You know, it's so crazy because if he wasn't saying it was his people specifically, if he wasn't relating himself to you, you might have thought this was like a Klan member writing about this, or I don't know, like Clayton Bigsby from the Dave Chappelle skit. Like he has some type of self-hatred. He letting you know he's not all the atrocities that we are well aware that took place against our people in America. Never once did he mention the European or giving him any accountability or responsibility for what befell us. He said, I've traveled in the South and I have examined conditions there. He looked around and seen. And it is the works of my people continuously practicing the things which bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect to any nation that lives the life. You see, you Moors don't abide by free national principles. You claiming that you do, but you don't. Not according to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Okay? Not according to the Prophet. And how these things will bring dishonor, disgrace, and disrespect is when you using the Prophet's name today and you associating it with what you're doing, You may think that what you're doing is a moral and just cause. But if you listen to the words that were said here today, or if you take time to truly examine the works of the prophet, you will see that you are tying yourself to a specific philosophical system of which that you don't agree with. And so the only two reasons why you would do such a thing is because you clout chasing using the prophet's name to bolster up your profile, or B, you just don't know the words of the prophet. And so from the parts that you have heard that you like, you rock with it, and then you run it with whatever everybody else is saying without giving a thorough examination to the teachers of the prophet. All right, so we're gonna finish out the last sentence.
And I am hereby calling on all true American citizens for moral support and finance to help me in my great missionary work to bring my people out of darkness into marvelous light from the prophet Islam.
Islam, Moors. So you see that there? We didn't even read this thing all the way through. There's many more examples in the paragraph that we did. But this is the national side of the movement. The Moorish Science Temple of America was incorporated into this government. It's part and partial, or part and parcel to some. We already went over that, why it don't make a difference to us. But the simple point is, it's a part of the United States of America, the Moorish Science Temple of America. We don't have to give up, being, within the society. We don't have to give up any rights under the Constitution that we will be afforded through the works of the prophet, restoring us back to the Constitution of folk. We won't have to give up any of that. And so we can acclimate what we're doing to modern times in modern life. But we're just, like I said, we're a special case in a unique set of circumstances, but it don't make us above the law. It's still within the framework of law, including the laws that freed us. That's why it makes us a special case. That's why Abraham Lincoln is important. That's why the prophet said 1865 numerous times. That's why he said that the end of the era of slavery was 1865 in Act 6. All right, so all of this stuff that we be teaching, it ties in together. But the foundation is the prophet. That is what led to that information. What made Morris decide to study those particular periods, to see the laws and the major players in the historical events that transpired during the time that we received our freedom from physical slavery. Now, this battle of mental slavery is proven a lot more challenging. But again, I just want to make sure that we understand, a distinction and what's the difference between walking in accordance with the prophet and just using his name. Because just like with prophet Jesus, it says in the scripture that many will come in my name. Well, according to our lessons, Prophet Noble Drew Ali is Jesus Christ reincarnated. And so him going by another title, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, they just using his name again, man. That's what they're doing. And they coming in his name, but they're not coming under his teachings. Islam. And so I'm going to close out on that, open the floor real briefly for any questions or comments. And with that, I say Islam and peace.
So, because anybody got any comments, anything, speak up.
Yeah, Islam, man. Islam, Morris. We don't pull teeth here, man. So if Morris don't have anything to say, we can go ahead and close out the meeting. We can turn over the floor to Sheikh Muhammad, and he can close us out. Islam, Sheikh.
Islam. Thank you, Sheikh Amir, for the beautiful demonstration. Thank you, Co-Chairman Sheikh Sadiq Parker Bey, for the assistance and the wisdom. And thank you all for your presence. We will now